So we'll see what Wham wants to do against the Ottoman Empire. I'm just excited to dive into this one.
Yeah, and we'll see that very shortly, because we are into the game. It is SAS versus Wham on his Ottoman, one of his famous civilizations, and it is Wham as Jeanne d'Arc. I'll have to see if the gun can be enough from the Ottomans, or if the gun from the Jeanne d'Arc is too much to be put against here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would love to see a level 4 Jeanne d'Arc in this game. I think it could have the potential to go in the later stages, depending on what Wham wants to do. God, I feel like I gotta be cross-eyed to figure out what's going on with all these scouts. There's 2 of them running around in different directions. I don't know what fresh hell is happening in this channel. There's so much production. It's coming out of their eyeballs. Rising Empires, their production is so fantastic. But anyway, SAS playing as the Ottomans, going for that military school opening a little bit early. If you take a look at Wham's spawn on the south side, that gold mine is pretty far up there. I would say if you get 1 or 2 spearmen up there, in about 2 minutes, that first spearman will be coming out very shortly. Just that little bit of pressure against not only Jeanne d'Arc, but their parent civ, French. I always say this when casting the French in Jeanne d'Arc. That 4 to 5 minutes, anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, they want to get left the hell alone. They don't want any kind of spearmen or towers or any of that kind of stuff, because they're just establishing what's happening. Ooh. And those knights are rather expensive units. So they want to make sure they get their economy going. So any kind of duress, is really going to be good against French or Jeanne d'Arc.
This is interesting, though. Jeanne d'Arc is on food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's one of 2 ways that I've seen people play Jeanne d'Arc. One, going on gold immediately out the gate, which is something I personally do. You build the house, then the mining camp, and then you start getting the gold. Or you can go to the house and go directly to the sheep, which gives you that sustainable +2, which might be a little different from building the mining camp. Now, in terms of when she gets level 2, I think it's a matter of seconds. I'm not sure how much it actually makes a difference, but because Wham is using Jeanne d'Arc and Jeanne d'Arc only to build that landmark, he will be up to level 2 when that landmark is completed.
Yeah, I mean, he will have a slower timing, but at the same time, remember, with the gold here, I mean, the spearman's a little bit slower, but still will have enough gold to be getting at least 1 knight, so SAS will have some spears to defend against that effectively. But then again, Dark Age Spearman is not exactly the best, and we can see Wham is being so careful about this. He is pulling back immediately after having 100 gold and just realizes that, yeah, I am going to be harassed here because there's military schools, so I'm just going to be falling back and chilling and gathering some wood myself.
Yeah, I think with Jeanne d'Arc and for French otherwise, usually wood isn't something that they're thinking about too much. I mean, in terms of their macro, in terms of the units that they want to make, obviously those knights are pretty expensive. If they want to add archers in a little bit later, more about just getting production buildings than anything else. But Wham is going for that booming strategy that we talked about before this game started. I mean, he's got 5 villagers building that mining camp going into stone. So definitely what I would assume going for that second town center. Whereas SAS, on the other hand, he's going to be building that twin minaret madrasa. But what do you think about Assassin for the Ottomans going for a fast castle kind of strategy? Because it seems to be the play against Jeanne d'Arc nowadays.
It seems to be the case, right? We'll have to see. I think he's going to be at least dropping a couple of military schools extra here and a blacksmith. It's a little bit of an awkward position just because of the berries, they exist. But you can see here as well, he is aware that there will be some kind of pressure coming in. He's rallied the military school onto the stone. And at the same time behind this is also laming the deer, so making sure that if a second town center is being placed on this deer patch, it's going to be as inefficient as possible. Just having fun there, we'll have to see. As well, JD, not too far away from being level 2 here, very shortly. And when level 2 is gone up, it's going to be the hunter as well. A lot of spice coming out from Wham here.
To be honest, I feel like in this matchup, it could be a good play. Obviously, you're going to be able to stop the spearmen if you are getting raided in a particular fashion. I mean, Sasson going for more of a deer lame strategy gets into a little cheeky +8 where she probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Good job, honey. You're doing great. Also, with Jeanne d'Arc going for the hunter, it keeps her a little bit more out of harm's way. You know, especially if the Ottomans, if they're going to go into a Janissary heavy composition, which against French, you usually see that. Her being in the back line and with the ranged mass means she might not get picked off. She might not get sniped as much as you might think. But we were talking about military schools for SAS, and he's got a metric butt ton of villagers.
It's a lot
on
of
that
schools,
stone,
okay?
so he's going for that second town center. It might be a little later.
No. It's a lot of schools. It's just a lot of schools, right? He's making sure that education, that is important, is getting all of them. And almost got the wolf too. So he's being very smart here, denying a little bit of XP. And that second TC we talked about actually found a beautiful spot here between a woodline, a couple of deers, and a gold.
And you know what's really important? He has Jeanne d'Arc there while building the town center. If you can click on one of those villagers that are glowing, one of the highlights for being in Jeanne d'Arc's vicinity is you construct 33% faster. So that town center gets up even quicker with a build time that takes a little bit longer than a lot of other buildings. So her having the constructing the kingdom advantage gives them the opportunity to get that town center up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a buff, right? But then again, remember how important the buff to villager build speed for the Chinese is.
Right.
Just imagine that one. We do have a couple of raids here coming in as well. The 0 points are going to be coming through as well. See what it uses. Probably going to be the extra military schools, which has not been dropped yet, but the town center will be dropped. Does lose one villager. Does matter a little bit here as well.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's interesting because obviously this one knight is doing good in terms of damage. You know, he got a worker kill. The town center was a little bit delayed. It was about 7 minutes, 20 seconds that it went up. Whams went up just about a minute quicker than that. So as far as economic count, I think Wham is always going to be in favor. But again, Jeanne d'Arc isn't parent French. So those town centers, they usually get those villagers a little bit of increased, or decreased, I should say, production time. He doesn't get that opportunity.
Why is this sheep going to the secondary TC? This one is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a lot of sheep, to be honest.
Yeah, but
I'm pretty sure he hit the Anatolian Hills, if I would think correctly. And honestly, I think it's a good strategy for a Vizier point because you want to make sure you're not raidable, right? Especially against the French. You want to make sure you're not raidable. SAS changing his macro just a little bit just to make sure he's got a decent amount on gold because he's really looking for that castle age. And Wham on the other side is doing pretty much the opposite of what you would expect Jeanne d'Arc to do. Does get boar, has gotten a wolf or two, which increases her XP. But he's got a second town center, and he's already starting a wall.
I mean, you know you're going to be under a lot of pressure to a certain extent, right? With the Sipahi, they're really, really fast, right? You got to remember. I mean, they're 1.75. They're one of the fastest units in the game. So you are going to be under a lot of pressure to a certain extent. However, you are going to be able to return that pressure because of the fact that you have those knights, which can be used. However, SAS is playing very, very defensive here. He's playing a very clumped. His town center is just right there. He's going with spears and making sure that some units are, you know, not all of them is all the way back or all the way in the front, I mean. So yeah, it's kind of just vibing right now. It looks like we're going to have a little bit of a boom off, and you can see here Wham being very proactive. Moving those knights, going to be protecting that villager as it's building the wall too.
You know, I'll be honest, Cow, I wouldn't count your chickens on the boom off yet. You know, because, I mean, yeah, SAS is macroing towards Castle Age and his military schools are getting some Sipahi, but on the flip side, Wham is continuing to make units. You could see how much he's using his resources. He's got some spearmen to help with the Sipahi. He's getting some knights as well. That's exactly what I'm talking about with that Jeanne d'Arc Hunter. Oh, that just gets me going, Cow. That... she does something to me, Cal. I'm telling you, that Q ability to get that 40 damage when you're level 2 like that, you're able to pick off those Sipahi. That's a +16 you wouldn't have had before. And against cavalry civilizations, I see a lot of people going for Jean, the hunter version. And it's actually paying off if you have the micro to do so, to pick off some of those low health cavalry units.
For sure. It's very odd though. I mean, the hunter has kind of just completely fallen out of fashion just because of the warrior is just so strong. But again, we talked about this with the Janissaries that will inevitably come out at some point. Speaking of guns, by the way, we're about halfway to... yeah, we're literally halfway to level 2 here. So, it's... I'm still just not sold on the hunter. I see it can work in like very, very specific scenarios, but I just don't see why wouldn't you just go warrior anyways, right? You have... I guess against the Ottomans, the thought process is that the Sipahi will have such an easy time on getting on you because of the extra range.
Well, I'm telling you, Cal, it's about later into the game. You know, we're gonna see SAS with about 15 to 20 Janissaries, and if Jeanne d'Arc runs in on a horse to try to do that AoE attack, she will get shot down in her prime. So I think this is really, even though this is pretty rare to see for Jeanne d'Arc Hunter, I think this is one of the times that I fully support it.
I mean, you have to fully support her, right? I mean...
Yeah, till death do us part, of course.
Yeah. I mean, which one of them?
Then until death, and then resurrection, and then another death, and then another resurrection, and then we'll part after that. That's fine.
Okay. I think I got that. Okay, yeah. Yep. Sure. Yeah. Castle Age is coming up for SAS here. It's going to be the MIA, as absolutely nobody expected. In terms of his 0 points, still hasn't used one. Still hasn't used his second one. It's kind of just chilling, seeing what the opportunity will bring here. Will, of course, suspect nothing else but an extra military school, considering just how strong they are, making him up to 4 military schools in total. He's currently just sticking with Sipahi, but he has changed those over to crossbows. Usually, that is what you see. If you do go for a little bit of tempo play, you can get a couple of man-at-arms out. However, it will take, of course, a little bit of time. So if your opponent is going to be going full feudal, then that's what you stick with.
And I'll tell you what, this is the incredibly interesting thing about Ottomans, and I think one of the things that makes Ottomans as strong as they are is because he had the ability to go up to Castle Age. So you might be thinking, as a normal AoE player, you might be thinking, okay, that's 1,800 resources he didn't put towards units. That's probably pretty good. But because of the military schools, the military count for each player is pretty much even. So SAS had the ability to get up to Castle Age and get to that age up where Wham had to make units to make sure he didn't get run over. So now Wham has to macro himself into Castle Age. And I'm thinking, in his perspective, at least for the next minute or two, he might feel a little bit behind.
Yeah, and we have that Vizier point. Oh, sorry, that was not a Vizier point. That was JD going... No, that was a Vizier point.
They sound exactly the same. They use the same audio.
Yeah. I'm actually one of the few people, I think, that actually miss the old Vizier point sound.
You might be one of the only ones, because I don't really remember what it is. Wham is going to be going for the Guild Hall, and for long games, obviously the Guild Hall is the play. I don't know how much you've seen of Royal Institute, but I think it does have a niche usage. You know, I mean, if you're trying to get, especially with Jeanne d'Arc, if you're getting a very aggressive in feudal age, you're making a lot of knights, you can use the Royal Institute kind of like as that last oomph, that death push to really get you there. Those pseudo-imperial Royal Knights are going to be giving you some good bang for your buck, especially with those stables getting consecrated. But Guild Hall is especially for those longer games because it's really, really going to pay off. Now, you got to remember, there was a little bit of a nerf to the Guild Hall. The stone is not able to get picked up as much as the wood and the food and the gold. It's about a 50% decrease the amount of stones, so not necessarily worth it too much anymore. SAS on the backhand, military count continuing to improve. He was Castle Age a little bit before. Military count 44 to 29. He's adding some crossbowmen. That's going to help him out against those knights. A couple Janissaries. He has the siege superiority. This is looking good if he wants to take something, Cal.
It's looking pretty good. One thing I do want to shout out that I'm actually surprised by. The Guildhall actually has updated the description that says generate stone at half the rate. I don't know
nice.
why I'm actually impressed by that, and I'm not sure if I should be. However, yeah, Guildhall, back to that one a little bit. For me, before, it was like, okay, exclusively Guildhall in FFAs. However, look at the composition that Wham has been building for himself. What are you going to get out of the Royal Institute, realistically? Like, okay, you can get the better Arbitraries, but Jeanne d'Arc's has, despite being a French variant, has grown more and more into just being an infantry comp instead of a cavalry composition, which is why we see so much Guildhall. There's also
and a lot of the times too. Sorry to interject, but a lot of the times too, it's the civilization that they're playing against, right? I mean, against Otto, like you make cavalry, you're dead. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have the ability to do it in feudal age, but in castle age, you're asking to lose a game.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So, but it's really odd, right? It's like, oh yeah, you have Royal Knights, like the best knight to get like the extra charge damage. And it's like, yeah, I'm just not gonna make them. It's like,
right.
Yeah, why not?
And watching it is perplexing, right? He's got 5 knights. He's got another 2 in the queue, which is fine. But you're right. There's a lot of spearmen. He's got 1 man at arms. It might have been a misclick. He probably made more spearmen than anything else. But what's really important against the Ottomans is to make sure you have ranged mass, right? Because they're going to be making their own ranged mass. They're going to be having a decent amount of things like men at arms and spearmen, which SAS has.
Okay.
But because of the MIA, right? Because of getting those mangonels, it makes it difficult to have a full range mass too. It's a very difficult. The Ottomans work very synergistically.
Yeah. So, fun fact, I have it on my secondary screen. SAS, just now, he clicked on the Vizier points. So, he got that extra movement or extra production speed on the middle 2 units, and it's on Dark right now. Still level 2. But only missing 25 XP, so we'll be very, very shortly in level 3. And we're just going to be passively sitting here. I don't think Wham or SAS really wants to take a fight. SAS doesn't want to take a fight because he will then get Jeanne d'Arc to level 3. And Wham doesn't want to take a fight because Jeanne is not level 3 yet. That was a tongue twister to a certain extent. But
Right.
Jeanne d'Arc is just going to be chilling. We're just going to be sitting back and enjoying a little bit of tea right now. Making sure that we are all set for the big battle that's about to come. Some Zipai, Knights, and Scout here. Looking to get a raid, and there we go. There's level 3. See what we get here on the Jeanne d'Arc. Can I click Jeanne d'Arc? What? I mean... Okay, this is a thing though I've been thinking a little bit about. Do you think people are intentionally holding back at times? Okay, never mind. Yeah, mounted archer going to be spawning those men at arms. It's going to be extra added there. One thing I do want to see though, that I've discussed a little bit with Killer Pigeon, that did get nerfed. But do you think you should rush a castle as Jeanne d'Arc just to be able to spam out the what are they called, the companions?
Now most people, I mean, just to preface, most people go for Jean's champions because of their damage to spearmen. I always thought I was Jean's champion, but I guess that's fine. The ability for Guildhall to not make as much stone, I mean, yeah, you could do that and spam out a keep, but I feel like you're losing a lot of tempo when you're doing that, especially if you're going to be losing a lot of eco as well, because you're not going to 2TC, right, if you want to get to castle as quickly as possible. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth it, but those Royal Knights, as far as worth it, they are not very long for this world and not very worth killing that one Imam for the Ottomans. 3 Royal Knights end up going down. It's a decent amount of resources. Economic count for these players, 79 to 74, and it looks like 79 to 77. It keeps changing by the second, but this is the time where I feel like especially for SAS, he could do one of 2 things. He can either A, really take a fight here. John just hit level 3, you know, or based on what he's doing for Macra, I think this is the answer. It's going to be the latter of the 2. Think about going Imperial before you do something.
Yeah, 1,000 food is ready to be collected in the guild hall, so could be easily clicking up and making sure that he goes to the next stage, has the red palace, and could potentially drop it. We do have a quick scouter on the map though, left-hand side. Could be nice for a red palace. Right side not too bad, but definitely gonna be contested considering SAS is doing two things at once here. He's dropping a keep and going Imperial and a red palace, so much right now is gonna be happening at once there. I'm not even sure what to look out for the most.
We'll see if Wham wants to try to complete this red palace. He's got 25 villagers there. He knows that gold is really important. Those villagers will get there before the gold for the keep, the gold villagers for the keep for the Ottomans is going to be made. He is going to make that outpost. He's going to see the litany of those units. Yeah, ends up canceling all that. Going to put the red palace a little behind, so it's just a little bit safer. You know, I think that's a really good idea. He might necessarily be able to get that gold, might be able to get that keep up, but here is the battle that we've been waiting for 20 minutes into the game, and it looks like there's a little bit of cat and mouse, a little bit of back and forth. John Dark going to be up there on the front. It's the mounted archer, don't forget. It could end up going down pretty quickly. Janissaries on the back end trying to get some hits on some spearmen. You see John's champions glowing. Sapahi with trying to get a surround over there on the western side of the battlefront. Spearman doing a good job. Wham doing a good job with that micro, bringing it all the way back. But that Janissaries and the crossbowmen back there for the Ottomans have not been touched for the duration. Those Janissaries are still packing a punch, cavalry or otherwise. And I would say that's a pretty good victory for SAS there.
It's a pretty damn victory. I mean, if you look at the destroyed value, 4,000 and still up 4,000 just army value as well. And gotta remember, behind all of this, the keep actually went up, and it is a good and big gold vein that SAS has secured for himself. Yes, the red palace did go up, but it's only a small gold vein, and it's only a small staging point. We do see here, though, I get Companion and Jean Companions here. I mean, I think it was swap over to Wham. Yeah, so Jean Champions is available to be trained, which, I mean, when you think about it, Jean's Champions is a damn good unit, just to make in general. I
mean, if you do have the food econ for it, I mean, and I think that Wham pretty much does, as far as Imperial goes for Jean d'Arc. Ooh, that's Sapai just got sniped. Let's go. You're doing great, sweetheart. He's making some arbaletre, which costs a little bit of food. Obviously, they're 80 food, but he's not making knights. Right, so he'll have a little bit of extra food income, or maybe some John's Champions might be a good idea. They can tank some hits from Janissaries. Crossbowman will still eat them alive. However, Jean d'Arc trying to get that one sacred site, does a little fadeaway, trying to take out one of those Sapahi, but ends up going down. Remember, it's a mounted archer. Sapahi are going to do bonus damage to those ranged units, so he's got to pull Jean d'Arc back. Only 500 gold, being level 3, so it's not too much skin off his nose, but still 500 gold you'd rather be doing something else with.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just want to sit back and chill, right? So you don't want to waste his gold right away. I mean, he's spending a lot of it on upgrades. Remember, we just got Imperial, and Imperial upgrades pretty damn expensive.
Yeah, I mean, those Imperial upgrades obviously are, you need a decent amount of gold income, because most of them are about 700 pop, you know? SAS, you can see where he's going in terms of military composition. He's going to be going into Janissaries, he's going to be going into Sapahi. The Sapahi do have a decent amount of health that'll help him against those arbaletriers, where Wham, he's going more in the men-at-arms variety. And you see that Sacred Site trying to get captured. It does end up getting captured, but will get neutralized very quickly because of that bombard outpost there. But for the French and French variant, Jean d'Arc going men-at-arms isn't something you normally see too often. I'm curious to see how it pans out for him.
I just noticed I pressed the minus button by accident there, so we'll just quickly pause to fix a couple of lag spikes. So yeah, this game right now is really weird spot because all of the eco damage and pretty much everything that happened in the early game is just nullified right now, and you're now basically putting and talking about this is which civ you're playing right now, an Ottoman and Jean d'Arc / French. We've talked about this before, and it's basically one of the best late game civilizations in the game. And in addition to that, Guildhall was the choice. So Royal Institute would have not scaled up to this point and basically would have been a useless landmark. But now you have the Guildhall, which is infinite generation of whatever resource you do decide.
Right, and I mean, it's going to depend on how Wham actually uses his military. right? And a lot of his military, his army composition isn't exactly gold heavy. So he could use that guild hall. If he does run out of gold, it might not be the worst thing in the world. But one of the best units with the best sound effect in this game, those French cannons, going to be trying to take hits at that Ottoman keep.
No,
I love this.
Great I mean, okay, it's a good sound, but Great Bombards is better.
Well, yeah, but I mean, not everybody can be a great bombard. You know, sometimes you just have a cannon, and that cannon, boy, does that thing make a good sound when it fires. Ottoman keep going to be about 70%, and we'll continue to start getting shelled down and shellacked. I think SAS has got to get something to do about it, because that gold is pretty much the only gold that he has. I think it's going to force a fight. Siege superiority might be in the way of the Ottomans. Big mangonel shots, a lot of that range mass going down. Jeanne d'Arc gets absolutely evaporated. Hopefully she gets resurrected at some point, but Janissary is still going to be able to pack a punch against these men-at-arms, and some spearmen coming their way too. Fighting under the Red Palace might not be the best idea for him, but the Sipahi are going to be trying to come in, trying to get around to these Springolds. 2 Springolds going down. A third one will be saved just because the Red Palace fighting the Arbaletrier. Arrows on those things. Now, Crossbowman and Janissary, it's basically that back mass that comes out for SAS, but we'll be able to kite a lot of the front mass, a couple spearmen, some men-at-arms that are there. Arbaletrier do have the ability to get Pavis shields, which can help him in a range versus range standoff. But I'll tell you what, the one thing that can rip through a Pavis shield, Cal, that's a gun.
Yeah, I mean, don't bring a wooden shield to a gunfight, I guess, to a certain extent. Yeah, that fight was super interesting, right? Because there was so much siege that went down for Wham and SAS. However, the big difference is that SAS made it for free and Wham made it for cheaper. Remember, you have the concentrate ability, and you also have a research that is available in some keep somewhere, I think. That makes it so that siege also is cheaper. So if you have a look and see if Wham actually has like a you know, just a couple of there we go. So this is actually perfect. So a siege workshop, 250 for a spring gold, but if a concentrated one, it's all the way down to 187. Cannon, it's so much cheaper. 225 450 versus 300 600. It's so much cheaper for Wham to actually be taking these siege fights, just because the fact that he can produce them for cheap and fast instead of produce them for free but slow.
Yeah, I mean, that really does add up, obviously. I mean, for how many there. Big raid on that gold mine. Sipahi taking down some villagers. Looks like more worker kill counts are coming by the way of SAS than Wham at this point. And you got to think, as a French civilization, you wonder why there wasn't that many worker kills. But SAS, on the other hand, we talked about some of the Imperial Age technologies in the Imperial Age siege. Obviously, Ottomans with the Great Bombard, right? They're going to be conking out some of those. We see how big and great that bombard really is. The one thing that the French do not have, unless they go with the siege workshop in Imperial Age, they don't have access to a culverin. So it's very difficult for them to take out these bombards with just Springolds. But it looks like if they're continuing to take those hits, if I remember correctly, it takes about 7 hits to take it down. Now, another big skirmish coming out, mostly ranged mass for Wham. It's a lot of Arbaletrier. Great bombard shot coming out, taking some big hits on those Arbaletrier. A lot of them are damaged, but about 3 of them end up going down. See how Jeanne d'Arc is sitting in the back, Cal? Jeanne d'Arc is just making sure that he doesn't get sniped down again. Almost gets in harm's way, but decides to back up. I think this is going to be incredibly challenging for Wham to really push through.
Yeah, it's so tough, right? You have these great bombards, and they do AoE damage as well, which is the big part. It's not a normal cannon shot, which, you know, you get from a normal bombard. It's great bombard, so it does AoE damage. And look at the raids here as well. Great timing coming in and able to take that Springgold as well. We're not going to be able to do a lot of damage to these elite men-at-arms. Might take some of them, but remember, Red Palace gives Town Center an extra shot, and it's rough raiding the French in late game now. Just, yeah, you want to be going Sipahi and do some run-bys, but they're not going to be able to do run-bys because those damn town centers just everywhere, just extra damage. Now,
yeah, they absolutely do. I think what we're witnessing here on the screen is very, very important. You know, the Great Bombard with that little bit extra range. You don't need Trebs take down the Red Palace, you can just use a bombard and really take it down quickly. It's at about half health. Some cannons and springolds might have something to say about it, however, but 2 cannon hits, 3 springold hits end up having to take that down. We have, looks like some front lines, or back lines, I should say, are trying to develop, but it might be a little bit interesting for them to do. SAS trying to put a keep down on this Western gold that you're seeing here. Wham has had this gold relatively safe for the duration of this game. Well, one villager ain't gonna do jack.
Unless he doesn't notice. Okay, more is on the way. Okay.
There you go.
It's like, guys, I want to build a fort, and then it's like, you know what this is? This is the one guy that starts digging a hole at the beach, and then everybody at the beach joins.
Yeah,
that's what it
which is great. I mean, you're gonna see that. You know, you're gonna see some counter raids by SAS as well on the western side, take down a couple villagers. I mean, you really gotta make a big dent economically if you want your raid to pay off. Looks like that keep is gonna get delayed for some time. But you're right about Wham being with Jeanne d'Arc, having the ability to consecrate everything and making everything a little bit cheaper. It's really gonna pay off for him down the road, and it just means he's able to continuously produce units if he gets rid of some of them. Now that gold mine on the east side that they fought for so long, Red Palace taking hits on some of those villagers too, is pretty much gone. So that's why all of these armies are focusing now on the western side, the western gold. It becomes the only real safe gold. That keep ends up going down by the ram, or canceled I should say, because SAS still has the stone and will have the stone to make another one if he so chooses. But you're going to take a look at the map as you're scanning through it. This is the last gold on the map, and we're 31 minutes into the game. There are civilizations that rely on gold. French is one of them. Jeanne d'Arc is one of them. You might say the Ottomans might be one of them as well to get those really expensive siege. It looks like those great bombards are laced in gold. Even though you might get some of them for free, you might need to make some of them a little bit later into the game. So might be thinking about a trade avenue as we're getting in later.
Sipai trying to do a run by. 3 shots just going to be... 3 of them is just going to disappear just from doing a run by. And here we see even a keep drop on the big gold vein. Or stone vein, sorry. Villagers getting in on the villager action. Tower has come up and is going to get that cannon emplacement. That's the great cannon emplacement that we see on those keeps. However, it's still going to be attempted. Villagers needs to run back. Keep still not tapped, so can't be burnt down just yet. A lot of damage back and forth there. It's going to be happening. Walls going to be attempted to come up as well, but I don't think this one's going to be too successful. One thing that still surprises me though is that neither player has added any trade yet, and also the fact that SAS has not gone for siege crews. Did he go for... He has to have gone for advanced case, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4. Still has a 5th vizier point that I don't know what he used on.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. It's very difficult because you get mixed up with the Jeanne d'Arc's level up, but a couple great bombards targeting that keep on the western side. It's already about 30% done. How much gold is on that gold mine, Cal? I want to click on it. About 2,000 gold left on that gold vein. That's 2,000 gold you'd rather have as opposed to your opponent. Springgold trying to take hits on some of those great bombards. One ends up going down, but a little too late. That keep already going down on the western side. That gold's been vacated for now. We'll see who actually ends up being the victor of it. There's little vanguard forces of both of these armies. You see some arbalète and some men-at-arms trying to come in, try to save that gold, but the mobility for both of these guys, for both of these players, it's really not there. Janissaries
going to be repairing up the great bombard though. It's a great little bonus. 125 XP, that's a lot. I did not know. And mounted archer still not level 5 though. It's going to be ticking in very, very shortly, I feel like. 175 XP, I mean, that's a lot to actually be getting.
Yeah, I think it really is just a matter of time, I think. And those Janissaries are quite the expensive unit too. So everyone that does go down the arbalète do a good job taking them out. It's plus 16 of pop. Looks like Sipai trying to get on the south side, taking down that cannon really easily. Those arbalète are not long for this world as well. This might be a little bit of a cleanup for SAS. He was trying to target those Janissaries. Might not be able to with how many arbalète there are. And it looks like for right now, going to be backing into that red palace. Jeanne d'Arc does get level 4. She's going to start blasting, ladies and gentlemen. She's got the markswoman trait. So she's going to be able to take some really good hits with that big giant gun. that she's got. And 35 minutes into the game, look at how much, look at this. Look at the damage that she could do to this keep and at what distance. It's kind of insane.
It's actually pretty wild. I didn't know it was that good. Alright, that makes a lot more sense then. But yeah, the wall that was on left side here, it's going to be attempted to come up. Keep has come through though, and it does have that great bombard emplacement as well, so it's not going to be successful. Do want to see a reaction from SAS. They're just putting a wooden wall here. Again, left hand side, big gold vein, lost gold vein. Markets has been placed down, at least the blueprint. What's funny here though is that actually what is considered your trade post is under contention by the other player.
Yeah, it looks like the roles have kind of reversed in this one. I think for Wham's trading post, or now it's Wham's trading post on the western side, might not be as safe as he might thought. I mean, we're going to have some spearmen going to be able to take down a decent amount of Sipahi, but this trading post on the western side, it's not like he has any defenses over there. He doesn't have a keep. He doesn't have any of that. He's worried about his Red Palace. Great bombards if they get one more good hit. Red Palace goes down. That's -1 landmark for Wham 0-1. And SAS has a keep over here on the eastern side already that's been taken out. So if Wham does, or if SAS, I should say, tries to trade with that trading post over on the eastern side, it's going to be relatively safer. So SAS might actually come out on top with gold economy if that keep stays there.
Spring ults making their way downtown, walking fast because they do have that upgrade. Nobody? Okay, sure. Sipahi raids though, it's going to be pretty brutal here. Are getting a lot of value when it comes to these. They're pretty fast, they're pretty brutal. Has the fortitude ability to do extra damage, especially when Wham doesn't realize this. Villagers has already been taken out, and we are landmark sniping? No. Does it just...
So I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, he intentionally hit this thing. He did take the gold out of the guild hall. That's another 6,000. I think he was looking to try to keep it for a little bit longer. I think this is going to be a photo finish where this guild hall actually comes down. There's a lot of spearmen trying to take down these Sipahi, and it looks like that guild hall will be safe for now. At about, if I were to estimate, probably about 700 health, something like that. It looks like it will. It is burning though, so hopefully he's able to get that repaired very quickly. I like what he was trying to do. He forced Wham to take out that gold. So now, as far as stockpile goes, he's going to have to rely on trade, and hopefully that 6,000 gold helps him carry a little bit.
Yeah, trade here. It's not going to be safe for SAS. For the time being, walls are being attempted to come up from everybody here. Wham is going to be going for expanded wall instead. Didn't really notice this, but yeah, walls up. Villagers are even coming through as well. A single villager is going to be setting up some walls. This is looking pretty brutal for Wham right now. Raids action all over the map right now. Sacred sites are going to be taken as well. The army is slowly making their way out as well. Wood slowly but surely running out, and I don't think SAS has a good way to deal with this in the back though. He has a lot of army here in the back, so maybe actually that army should have been used elsewhere to be able to take and care of the rest here.
Yeah, I mean, take a look. Those Janissaries had to go all the way back to the northern side to make sure. And what does that mean? It means they're not on the front line. So Wham's got a decent spearman mass. Is going to be trying to do some damage, but now we're seeing that death ball of the Ottomans, right? Look at all these bombards.
Baby. 6 great daddy bombards.
All right. Thank you for that. So, some villagers trying to get to that wood line over there on the western side. A lot of these wood lines have been kind of carved up. Oh man.
Okay, that managed to go. There's no gates here. Oh no, he has a gate, but he walled it in. Oh no. But look at this though. One thing I have to commend SAS for though, the sheer consistency of the Sipahi raids is absolutely stunning. I love it. He's consistently having Sipahi just constantly making pressure, forcing Wham back, and it's just so tough to deal with. This keep though as well, it's been able to keep it alive, which has made sure that he can still go here. Wham right now is trading for 78 gold a pop. He's going cross map here as well, and look at this as well. Sacred site and market doing a double bounty here, and even putting a keep. So He wants to make sure that SAS is not able to trade to this neutral trade market, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really like this idea, especially when for all these high-level players later into the game, they realize what's the most important in terms of resource generation, and they do the best they can in the way to stop it. While SAS on basically both sides trying to do the best he can and trying to get some raids. You've seen the economic count from both of these players continue to dwindle just a little bit as we reach the 40 minutes into the game. We were at triple digits for most of them at about 110 apiece. Now we're at 97 to 81. Wham is actually struggling a little bit in the economic count. So I'm curious to see with the town centers that he has, if he's really just deleting them to try to get traders, or what the situation is. That Red Palace just gets absolutely disintegrated by big bombard cannonballs. Oh, John Dark just got a cannonball to the dome. Oh my god.
Holy.
How am I going to recover from this? I knew I should have took out that life insurance policy on her. That was ridiculous.
Oh god. I mean, it's like you, and then there's the guy she tells you not to worry about.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, those bombards, man, just because of the range that they have, they can really do some damage. There aren't a lot of Sapahi over here from SAS. There are a decent amount of Janissaries. He's got about 60 out on the battlefield right now. The great bombards in the back might be able to help out just a little bit. Springhold's right next to that Red Palace, trying to do some damage on those bombards, and it looks like they might have the ability to. There are so many dead Janissaries over here in the back, and I know that Janissaries are a good unit, you know, they can cut through Pavis shields and all that kind of stuff, but they take a lot of damage to ranged units, and SAS is throwing all of these Janissaries away.
Great bombards are helping out on the battlefield here a little bit. They're not getting repaired off, but they are getting taken out. Springhold's not being taken out, and Princess Adol still at least not fighting underneath Red Palace, at least not on a live. Goodbye, villagers, that's for sure. At least the town center still helping out on that one. Remember, even though the Red Palace is down, town centers and keeps will forever have that passive. Now we have a mass building slowly but surely here for SAS. Just getting in on these decent fights here. Springhold is here. Look at the resource bank as well. It's looking so much better for SAS in terms of wood count. However, the gold is kind of where an issue. He's not going to be able to replenish any of that as the trade has completely stopped here on the left hand side. Right hand side is possible to get one here, but SAS is not going to be realizing that for the time being. The Red Palace will not go up, and Wham is tapping out. SAS goes up 1-0 in the series.
Wow. Unbelievable game. And I think the ending, the reason why the tap out, not only with that Red Palace going down, but at the same time, he couldn't muster any kind of trade himself. I mean, like, yeah, he blocked that western side, that Stonewall area, but you saw how much gold he had. He had to pull it out of the guild hall.
Yep.
And the guild hall didn't really have that much gold the way it was, so he pulled it out. I'm not sure if he pulled it out a second time, but I would believe that he did. He used all of that gold and realized he couldn't produce all of the units that he needed to produce.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, when you look at the matchup of the players, you would never expect this outcome. But I have to say, SAS has been mad grinding on stream. So huge props to him. He is getting a lot better, and it shows. He's able to take out Wham right now. However,
yeah, I mean, it was good for him. It was a favorable matchup for him against John Dark, playing as the Ottomans, right? And he executed it. You know, I mean, that's what the top players will do. If there's something like a good matchup that you're around, if there's something like a potential to win a part of the game where you have a window to win the game, good players capitalize on it. And that's what SAS did, taking that 1-0 series lead. Game number 2 going to be coming your way shortly. And I'm curious to see what civilizations that we are going to see. I see a decent amount of new civilizations and old coming out of both these guys. So we'll see a little bit of both today, hopefully.
Johan back coming in with the 10 gifted subs. I mean, the overlay. Come on, alerts. You're supposed to be doing something right now. Gosh, darn it.
Damn, bro. Thanks for, on behalf of Rising Empires, I should say thank for the gifted, the subscriptions. game number 2. Hopefully, we'll get you a good series for this one, and hopefully those gift subs will be worth it for you. Game number 2, excuse me, is between the Malians and the Delhi Sultanate. 2 oldies but goodies in this one, and I'm curious to see what kind of shenanigans we're going to see out of the Delhi Sultanate, especially against the Mali, because for the Mali, we both know from having experience either playing or playing against them, they really do not play like other civilizations, let me tell you.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Me and KP, I'm referring to KP a lot here, despite being a competitive stream or competitor stream. But me and KP kind of like thought about this. So this is really interesting for me to see though, because Coastal Cliffs only has 2 sacred sites. That's step number 1. So, already a little bit of a disadvantage for the Delhi. But for the Malians, gold spawns is completely whack, because pretty much always all of them is forward. And now we're playing against the Delhi, which is an aggressive civ, and I think SAS is just outdrafted Wham here.
Yeah, I mean, it could be so. I mean, I know, especially with the Delhi playing against the Malians, you can get really cheeky. In Dark Age, you could do things like out of barracks, get a spearman, and whether you're in Dark Age or any of the other ages, spearman come wall. And you can go around and wall that pit mine and make sure you don't get any houses up there. Like there's a lot of I want to use, just because the Malians have the Great Bar, I want to say festivities, but there's a lot of there's a lot of different plays that you can see that are different. And I think the Delhi Sultanate could have a capability, just because of the way that they play in Feudal Age. They could have the ability to get a mass and steamroll you.
Yeah, it's very scary as well, right? Because normally it's like, okay, knights against Ghazi raiders is not the best thing for the Ghazis. Of course, you can still take a decent fight, but you gotta remember, Sofas counts as heavy cavalry, so they're counted by crossbows and by the Ghazis, and because they're a worse knight, effectively, I actually don't know on top of my head how Ghazi versus Sofa does go, but I have a feeling if it comes to a feudal fight with Sofas and Ghazis, I don't think Sofas comes out on top.
The Sofa has a surprisingly low amount of armor in Feudal Age. I think it's 2 melee, 2 ranged. So it does negate the +2, I guess, that the Ghazi Raiders have. Because the Sofa do have a little bit of more attack, and the Ghazi Raiders with 0 melee armor, I would predict that the Sofas might come out on top. But I will say, if they do come into combat one-on-one, that piece of furniture is going to get damaged.
Yeah, I think it will definitely be ripped apart and at least somehow be put on the sidewalks, and someone is probably going to pick it up, even though it's a little bit damaged, because they can fix it. We'll have to see, though. Hopefully we'll be getting into game very, very shortly. Players are taking a little bit of a break. It has been a long day, and Wham and Anatent especially is going to be also playing a tournament after this. There's a 2v2 tournament that's happening on a Nomad stream, where that is going to be pretty interesting. It's just straight up a 2v2 tournament, which I mean, it's for fun. Why not? But yeah, other than that, I guess we need to go into small talk. Shit.
Sorry, that one got me, because Cal's like, shit, I gotta talk to this man. What's going on here? I don't know how to talk. All right, that was Cal. That was probably the best joke I've ever heard you say.
This was supposed to be a joke. No.
I know, that's the point. So, with the, I mean, we can talk about the game just a little bit more. So, taking a look at some of the drafts of these guys, I do think that taking a look at SAS's side, let's just exclude Byzantines. We know they're not going to be played. Nobody cares. I don't. Okay. They're not. Okay. I'll eat my shoe.
Okay.
You can clip it. Clip that. I don't care.
You're going to eat Chewbacca? Wait, what?
No. But I do think SAS might have a little bit of an upper hand on this one. I think, especially with Delhi, I think he's got a pretty decent matchup on this one. I think French plays well into all three of the other civilizations that are left. For Wham, I think English, it feels like a 50-50, and I really hope it's English versus French because I usually have a lot of jokes saved up for English versus French because it happens so often. And against Japan, sometimes they're a little bit slow going. I know Jeanne d'Arc has a pretty good win rate against Japan. I would assume French does as well. And French first. China is usually. I feel like that's a little bit up in the air too, but it feels like for French they might be a little bit better in that regard as well. So, I think SAS did a good job of drafting. I think it depends on Wham this game, especially. Obviously, it's pivotal, but it's going to set him up for a better game 3.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the map draft here while you talk. So I do believe. Okay, I can't find it. Wait, hold on. I do believe the last map will be Gorge. So. Yeah, so it will be Gorge. And that actually only, for me, it only leaves Japanese for Wham. But it can be both, it can be French, it can be Abbasid, it can be Byzantines for SAS. Which is at the point where I'm like, okay, you pretty much you can choose what the matchup will be. I think Wham will throw a little bit of a curveball on Gorge if we do go to game number 3 here, because to be honest, I don't think it will be a game number 3 based on the fact that I don't think Delhi versus Mali is very playable from Mali's perspective. But if we do go to game number 3, I don't see China being played on Gorge. I don't see English being played on Gorge. I can only see Japanese being played on Gorge. And yeah, I don't want to play Japanese against Abbasid or French.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like Gorge is such a good French map, just because they go outside to get a lot of those pocket ecos anyway. Yeah, and usually when they try to establish that map control earlier in the game, it gives them the ability to do those things, and having the ability to raid your opponents outside pocket ecos that are so necessary. A lot of the civs that Wham has left, Japanese, English, and Chinese, I mean, you can make an argument for things like English and Japanese. You might not have to necessarily go out for that pocket food because you have farms infinitely that just do it for you. But I think China could certainly struggle. Going for things like those deer packs and stuff while they're trying to get a granary transition going and making units, it seems to be where China really struggles. And I think Gorge could help exacerbate that weakness, and French could probably capitalize on that. But we are just, theory crafting. We are just kind of brainstorming as to what game 3 could be. And if there's possibility of that, and you're saying based on matchup, a decent probability that we might not even see one, so we'll see what Wham has to do. I have seen his Malians before. Well, I've seen just about every civilization that Wham plays before. And every time Wham is in a series, I hate to count him out.
Yeah, I don't like counting him out either. That's for sure. But 10 seconds away. Are we gonna do like a? Are we gonna do like a New Year's chant thingy? No, we're not. Actually, we're just gonna be jumping straight into game because we are like that. So, Coastal Cliffs, a very interesting map for those who have joined us. It's pretty much Dry Arabia, except a third of the map is water, and you can't go through the water. And also, stone is completely unnecessary on this map because it's so far away from your home.
Yeah, that makes it pretty interesting with the Delhi, honestly. I mean, we talk about the Delhi Sultanate over and over again about things like keeps, about things like the compounded defender and village fortresses and all of that kind of stuff. And if your stone is in harm's way because of how far it extends and for how little there is that's safe for you, is compounded defender even a good choice when you get up to Castle Age? Maybe we start getting our textbooks out and we go towards House of Learning in Castle Age instead. So will be difficult to predict what SAS is going to end up doing, but what I can predict is in Feudal Age, you got to be looking towards those sacred sites, and there's only 2 on Coastal Cliffs. You can see that one sacred site on the most western side. Again, Cow, there is a bunch of garbage around it.
It's supposed to be resources that you can use, okay? That's at least what I've been told. I don't know. I don't play out the games that long enough. So,
But still, there's a lot of stuff.
there's a lot of
There's a lot of
there's a lot of okay. There's a lot of garbage. But what we talked about in the lobby screen though, look at how the gold spawn for WAM is. I see a glaring problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having them all in the same place obviously proves to be difficult, and all of them are forward. I mean, you can see how SAS is. He has one gold mine that's a little bit on the forward side, on the eastern side, but this one's relatively, it's southern. It's relatively safe. He has another south one that's pretty safe as well. So Delhi not necessarily more as gold heavy as the Malians, but still having that spawn by Wham proves it to be difficult. And I think if we are dealing with map control and Delhi ends up getting a couple of those sacred sites, ends up pushing into the Malian base, that will be a very contested area.
For sure. So, I'm interested in seeing what WAM will throw at us, though. I don't expect anything different from SAS, right? It's just like Gazi. It's just Tower Victor into Gazis into Archer and Spear, which is pretty standard. If this game even goes to the castle, I would be very surprised. In fact, we'll have to see. But yeah, so with all of the gold being so forward, I feel like WAM is almost forced into playing a little bit extra into feudal. One of the things I do think I would like to see, which I don't know if I would like to see, is the warrior scouts actually coming out a little bit on the map right now and being a little bit annoying here.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for that as well. I think if WAM, I mean, this is kind of what happens with the Malians, right? They want to do things like Kaboom, they want to do all of that kind of stuff, but doing it completely naked is going to be an issue for him, right? Yep. Especially because the Delhi is going to be making a lot of units. So the Manticore is going to help now with a little bit of gold production. Is going to help get some of those cows. He is getting wheelbarrow as well. So he will have that kind of easy Malian transition into castle, but it's about how much SAS can actually stop it and deal with it. And we talked about how different Mali is compared to other civilizations, and it's because their resources, or the majority of their resources, I should say, don't really come from villagers. They come from a bovine species. They come from pit mines, So when you're thinking about trying to take down a Malian economy, you're thinking about taking down things other than villagers.
Yeah, and I mean, it's starting pretty early already, right? Second pit mine going to be trying to come up here. It's going to be spotted out pretty much immediately by SAS. It's going to be harassed already. In the back of the base, we have seen the normal Tower of Victory going to Scholars, to Sanctity, and we actually see a little bit of greed here. A Blacksmith is going to be coming up first. But, on the other side, I would not be... I'm pretty much just expecting Ghazi Raiders. What's really interesting as well, which we did roughly touch upon in the lobby, I could see a future where there's walls around these gold veins from SAS.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a potential of that happening, and I think the high-level Delhi players, that's something they never, ever forget. Well, one thing high-level Delhi players never forget researching their technologies, which SAS is doing very well. But they never forget that their foot soldiers can make those walls, and they can make it very irritating for somebody who does not like walls.
Yeah, it could be pretty brutal. I mean, I can't remember, but it was like the early days of Mali. And I think it was like Corvinus or someone who was like going Dark Age Spearman, and you just like put some Spearmen, and then you're just like, in Dark Age, you already start putting the walls around the gold veins.
Yeah, I was talking about that a little bit in the lobby, and actually the first one that I've seen do this, I don't think he was the first to do it, but the first one that I've personally seen do it was actually State. I watched State play this matchup, this was a couple seasons ago, and he started walling around the Malians, and I was like, this guy's a genius. that was like insane. I gotta do that. And then I remembered I don't have the micro skill.
Ah, fair enough. I mean, it's like, oh, that's a genius thing. It's like, actually, one of the things I'm actually very excited about one time in the future was, or in the past I should be saying, was that the possibility of like some basically like some open AI shit in AoE4. Because there's a lot of like cool things that you in theory could be doing with unlimited APM. Like dare pushing, for example, and just perfectly microing, right? Which, of course, will be interesting to see. And it's also something I've like had made a bold prediction for in the future. Is that in like a couple of years, when the meta is going like a little bit stale and the skill level has kind of flattened out a little bit, we will see a lot more 1-1-1 compositions.
Yeah, and I think we started to see some of those develop with civs that you necessarily didn't expect to do. You know, I remember GUA doing things like a French 1-1-1 build when you think about just knights and archers, you know? Like, I think there's a pretty big possibility of that happening because this is a rock, paper, scissors. If you come with all three, it means you can counter all three at the same time as well. So, Wham does only have Donzos added in a javelin thrower too. As well, one of the things so annoying about those Donzos is because of the fact they just have an extra spear lying around. I don't know where they put it or where they shove it, but I'll tell them where to shove it. They take those spears and they end up throwing them at those Ghazi Raiders, so they don't necessarily need to catch up to them to take some of them down, or at least give them a decent amount of damage. That one Ghazi Raider is going to end up going down eventually. There you go. There's one down. Another one goes down just because of a miss. Micro adventure, but Delhi 8 minutes into the game, already starting to cap some of those sacred sites. You see red blobs on the minimap on both of those logos.
Yeah, it's taking damage, running around. Scout's going to be going down as well. Throwing all away a lot of units here, but at least getting a lot of information and knowing that Wham will be playing a lot into feudal here. Cowboy going slowly but surely, keeping those cows alive. I approve. But also a double archer range as well as barracks here, indicating that Wham is willing to play into the long feudal that the Delhi so love.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of playing into, just like you said, it's playing in what the Delhi wants to do and what the Malians don't. And that's why you talked about this matchup being a little bit more polarizing than some of them, although Mali, I feel like, does have a decent amount of polarizing matchups just because of the ability to get the cow boom off or not, you know, develops into whether they win or lose. Now, that Sacred Site victory is going to be at about 9 minutes and 15 seconds. This gives Wham ample time. I know it gives SAS the gold. I know how important Sanctity is for the Delhi Sultan. It does give him an ample amount of gold, but Wham getting gold from those pit mines and the like as well. So we're going to see these two unit compositions butt heads at one another and see which one comes out on top. But SAS trying to get a little bit more aggressive over there around that first pit mine. Those archers are going to be able to take care of a Donzo or two. Javelin throwers in the back now. You only need probably about 6 or 7 to take down an archer. And because they're kiting, because they're stopping, try to hit some of those Donzos, the javelin throwers are able to catch up and kill a decent amount of this mass. Military count 19-19. We're tied on both sides, ladies and gentlemen. And the Donzo and javelin thrower army composition is a whole hell of a lot better than something like Ghazi Raider and an archer, just because of the ability to hard counter one another.
For sure. And we can see right there, I mean, SAS not having the Ghazi mass to really be able to jump onto the javelin throwers as well, so it's kind of just kiting it back and just losing army slowly but surely. Can't really move out. We do see him now researching and swapping into that 1-1-1 composition, and we talked a little bit about their spears here, but have Donzos already here for Wham, which is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a better spear.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so difficult for the Delhi to warrant making their own spearmen. And especially because we don't see Wham going, I mean, he does have a stable. I think I remembered him putting one down. But he's not necessarily going to be going into the sofas too heavily. He just queued his first one, right? And we're only about 11 minutes into the game. So, I mean, it's good the SAS is preparing for it. But those spearmen, obviously, the Donzos outclass them. The javelin throwers have enough of a punch in each particular javelin to start to take down spears pretty effectively, to the point where archers might not even be necessary.
I mean, potentially. They're pretty damn strong, but one of the things, again, so far is, in the future, will probably just be, I mean, right now, the only job for it is just be a mobile unit that's a little bit tanky, and that can be able to take the sacred site. So will force either a split or a full just overreaction here from SAS. I mean, army-wise, he's up 10 right now, but again, with those counters, Bonzos and Javelin throwers do a whole lot of damage. That could be pretty brutal.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, you could take a look at the army value too on both sides. Yeah, SAS a little bit higher, 41 and 29. Army value, Wham still has a lead by a couple hundred. And a lot of the units that Wham has, the Donzo, that could throw the spear, the javelin thrower, which also throws things. There's a lot of throwing in the Malian Empire. You have the ability to take down some of these units from afar and not necessarily take a full-on engagement, as you see Wham doing. He was taking pot shots at an archer or spear or something like that. And for Wham, all he really needs is a little bit of time. SAS lost both sacred sites. He's recapping the one on the west side. The east side actually got neutralized. And for Wham, as long as he has the time and continues to do this, his eco is going to be better than the Delhi Sultanate. So for him, it's just a matter of time. As long as he stays alive, I'd say by about, I don't know, minute 17, minute 18, Malian could steamroll.
Yeah. And it's at that point where you just realize that, hey, it's like a little bit in the area right now. It's a weird spot for Mali. However, they are looking to be going up to the castle edge. Cowboom has been fully completed. They're keeping them all alive for the time being, at least. I only see sheep carcasses and no cow carcasses, so thumbs up. But the issue with the Malians and their castle edge timing, they get that upgrade so quickly. And the power spike of castle is just so brutal for the Malians. It's so quick, it's so hard. And it really is tough for the Delhi because they get their age up so slow. Or basically they get all their research so slow. Compared to Malians who get it so quickly. But now...
Right.
Split up army here. Ghazi are not in position to jump on the javelin throwers. A ram is trying to be coming up here. Not able to do so.
And I think SAS is kind of noticing that he's let Wham sit back just a little bit too far, and we know SAS is kind of going somewhat all in on this field age. He's got 70, now 69 nice military units, and he's trying to push the initiative because he thinks Wham's going to be castle soon. He sees that Wham hit that castle age button. The Grand Fulani Corral is now corralling all of those bovine species, so it's put up or shut up time for SAS. You see what the javelin throwers can do. Even against something like Ghazi Raiders, you send all of them, you target one of them, and you might end up taking them down. SAS does have one ram, takes down one of that outpost that did have arrow slits, so it's going to help him out just a little bit. But if he continues to keep trying to push this, I don't know if he has enough Ghazi Raiders to get us surrounded, and he absolutely won't. Wham's doing a good job of having the Ghazis, or the Donzos, making sure that the Ghazis don't get us surrounded. That's exactly what is happening here. Villagers getting pulled from the Malian town center. They're going to start to rain all of their fire down. The Donzos for Wham just creating that front line just to make sure they don't get us surrounded with things like Spearmen and Ghazi Raiders. And it looks like he did a pretty good job. Those javelin throwers have a decent amount of ranged armor. They're able to take down some of those Ghazis one at a time. And now there's only archers here for SAS. Reinforcements are trying to come in the back end. But in terms of where the starting town center is, there's just about only archers at a time where those javelin throwers will make quick work of them, and those javelin throwers are of the veteran status, so they even have more damage per javelin that can make a big dent into something like a Ghazi Raider. And it looks like, Cal, only one or two of your brothers ended up going down in the making of that engagement.
Yeah, however, also one or two houses was going down in that engagement as well. I mean, the ram spent a lot of time on that gold mine, which, you know, not too ideal, but SAS, I mean, the army value, or the army numbers right now, looking pretty good for SAS. But remember, a lot of that is streaming across the fields here. Actually, no, there's a lot of villagers. But he's trying to drop a mark there now, needs to rebalance his economy a little bit. He's far away from castle, and if he stops making units, Wham will be turning around and going very ham for himself as well. So, what does SAS do right now? He needs to put a lot of pressure. He needs to rebalance the economy. He's getting 250 gold a minute purely passively now from the sacred sites so that he has not walled up. He needs to put a little bit of defenses now, put on some aggression at the same time. He's going to be doing so as well. He's doing some Ghazi, and that is a very far forward dare push, or a dare spot. But hey, why not? has some tiers himself that I don't think he even scouted. Oh.
Yeah, and I think this is when you go all in as Delhi, especially all in field, and you're making as many units as you can. It looks like he's macroing up to castle as we speak. However, the Delhi doesn't necessarily do well with things like farm transitions either. We talked about Jeanne d'Arc kind of struggling in that department, but the Delhi Sultanate also, because they're spending, you know, they're worried about military and getting all of their military consumption and doing it as quickly as possible. So they don't really have time to do things like farm transitions. So they go try to get those deer that are a little bit out of harm's way, or in harm's way, I should say. Those villagers have to vacate their spot. And now the SAS might not have a gold problem because he's got a couple sacred sites. That gold mine in the back home hasn't really been touched too well, but he's going to be running into a food problem very soon. He's got a berry patch on the south side that does end up will get eaten eventually. But after that, the boar's haram. You can't do that. He hasn't scouted those deer on the western side. He's got to be thinking, well, now where do I go?
He should know. He
should.
He should. I mean, he's eaten up one of the dairy patches. Maybe, I mean, this comes down to it being a new map, and he does know if he has 2 dairy packs. But I think he should. I mean, he knows that. He knows that SAS. He knows that Wham has 2 dairy patches, and yeah, now he sees it. Knows that the relic is down here as well. So he's going to be picking those up. Wham has not been able to do so, but look at the army numbers right now. It's looking pretty scary. It's not looking
this is where, I mean, you're looking at economy. This is when the Malians become the Malians that we all hate.
Melee units,
right?
by the way.
I mean, that scholar said his last prayer, that's for sure. But Malians, I mean, take a look at their food economy. They're at 1,600 a minute. Most of it's just coming from cows. He's got pit mines, and you know, he's getting some gold generation as well, so he's at about 900 gold per minute. This is when you really outscale your opponent. And this is the damage of what happens. Now, military count 79 to 46. He's continuing to dwindle that Delhi military count. Delhi trying to add in some men-at-arms. Javelin throwers still might make quick work of those men-at-arms just because of how many there are, but they're focused on that range mass in the back. There are a decent amount of archers. Some Sofa's going to be coming in to try to help him out. Imported armor just about a third of the way done, so these are not the tanky Sofas that we all know and love, but they still are able to pack a punch, especially against those men-at-arms. That front line gets pretty much evaporated by SAS. The only thing he has is basically a lot of these ranged mass. He has a lot of men-at-arms in the queue, but it's going to take a long time for them to actually get out, number one. And number two, he's not going to be able to mass because SAS is production locked and will end up losing this one. Ends up tapping out because of that. The Malians just hit that power boom a little bit too strong, and we got a 1-1 tie here, ladies and gentlemen, going into game 3.
We got a 1-1, and look at the military count, though. It looked pretty good, but honestly, again, the power spike, I talked about this. The power spike that you have from hitting castle as the Malians is so quick. You don't have you have 30 seconds from the hit castle till you are able, till they have their veteran upgrades. Meanwhile, you have like 3 minutes from Delhi hits castle, and I don't know, the upgrades was barely started for SAS when this engagement happened from Wham, so he was just not able to do anything about it.
Yeah, a lot of the times I've noticed, especially when Delhi goes Tower of Victory, you're not really worried about getting a whole mess of scholars. You know, this isn't the Delhi of old where when you do get a lot of scholars and how much they're able to heal, you're not worried about getting 9 or 10 of them and they just end up steamrolling into fights. So nowadays, especially with Tower of Victory, even though it does help your ranged mass, you don't necessarily think about getting a lot of scholars because you got to build a second mosque. You got to actually wait for the train time for the scholars, and they cost full price because you didn't go Dome of the Faith. So a lot of times you just end up getting a couple to get your sacred sites and your relics. They end up going down because they're out in harm's way. So then you don't have a lot of scholars to actually do things like research technologies. So you hit Castle Age and you just start making units that are available in Castle Age, and he just wasn't able to get enough of them.
Pretty much. Then again, I'm actually a little bit happy that healing is no longer a proper thing, but yeah. However, let's go on to the next game, game number 3, with the one that decides here. We talked a little bit about this, French on Gorge. It's a good map, and I said Gorge is not a good map for Chinese or English, but we do have Japanese, and SAS for all intents and purposes, actually picked this matchup himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, as someone who has played a little bit Japanese, what do you think against the French?
A lot of the experience that I've had with Japanese, both playing with them and playing against them, has been with Jeanne d'Arc. There's not a lot of normal parent French players on ladder nowadays. But the Japanese do take a little bit of time to get going, depending on what you choose to do. There's one of the reasons why I have a lot of fun playing Japanese is because there's a multitude of different build orders. There's a multitude of different ways you can play. You can go for a fast feudal into some barracks and get aggressive with some foot soldiers. You can start with 5 villagers on stone and go up that way and then get enough for either a daimyo palace or a second town center or both. You could do things like a fast castle, where the fast castle for the Japanese, you can get that floating gate up and get it floating in the air by about 8 minutes and then start cranking out mounted samurai. So there's a lot of options that Wham could take this. To be honest, I'm a big fan of the fast castle build for mounted samurai. And I think that's something that if French stays in feudal age for a little too long, they do things like a second town center. The Royal Knights don't necessarily do as well against the mounted samurai because those mounted samurai reflect that first piece of damage. So the Royal Knight charge ends up getting negated, which is a honking amount of damage. The mounted samurai against a feudal age Royal Knight, that feudal age Royal Knight doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, and it's, again, we talked about this early in the stream. One of the reasons that Royal Knight is so good is because of the extra charge damage. And when you can negate that extra charge damage, yeah, never mind then properly, I guess.
And then, I mean, it makes French do things that French doesn't want to do, which is building a barracks. I don't want to build that. If I'm French, forget that. I'm gonna build some archery ranges. I'm gonna get some stables.
You want to build archery ranges, weirdo?
Arbaletier do exist. They're pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's fair enough actually.
I mean, so does SAS want to meet him in Castle Age, or does he want to hang out in feudal? French is one of those civilizations that it's okay to hang out in feudal for an extended period of time just because of how good the Royal Knights are. But if you're running into something like a counter, I mean, Wham could do something like, instead of going into a mounted samurai spam, can go into like Onimusha spam. For basically to get into the specifics of it, because we have the time. When you get that floating gate up, you get the Shinto priest with the Yorishu. Remember, it was changed before. It used to be you would just get an infinite amount of them. Now you have a max of 4 that you have to strategically put in places. So yes, there is a little bit of thinking. And the first one, when you go into Fast Castle, the first one usually goes into a production building of your choosing, because if you put it into a stable and you make mounted samurai, you can get a mounted samurai every 12 seconds. It's pretty good. For an Onimusha, that is a little bit on the more expensive side, and the Japanese version of the crossbow, which is mounted, you can get an Onimusha every 8 seconds. Also pretty good. So it reminds me of...
From a single building.
A single building, yeah. But it reminds me of the old Castle Age horse archer builds of Rus, right? Because you would do things like get that fast castle. I mean, there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of nuanced differences. Like Professional Scouts was a little bit busted, stuff like that for the Rus. So that makes it a little difficult. But for the Japanese and doing things like Onimusha spam, they have the ability to do that, and they can just do it with one production building. So against something like a Royal Knight, that could be a good idea. They have their base damage is 10, and they have a +9 to heavy, regardless of any other, if you don't get Steeled Arrow or any of that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that you don't at that point. So there's a potential of that to happen. I think it could cause a lot of duress for the French, especially if the French want to do things like 2 town center and use that villager production speed boost for multiple town centers and really get their eco going. Wham could bring on a lot of harassment if that's what SAS decides to do.
Yeah, and one thing that's also worth reminding as well, right? I think this will be a slow start to the game, and that is based on the fact that Wham will most likely anticipate that SAS is going for 2 TC, because SAS is expecting either a dynamo or a second TC from the Japanese, right? We have seen some very, very good timings with a second TC from the Japanese coming out, right? Because they do open with that. They sometimes do that open with the Forge on Stone, right? What is it? You send 4 villagers out to gold or something, and then they go to stone next, and then you basically get the gold passively from there. So that could be an option, right? French has the better eco bonus in that way because they just produce villagers faster. But at the same time, right, SAS is able to, if you do choose to do so and meet Wham in castle, he can make a couple of knights just to harass and, delay the castle as much as possible, and then go up to castle himself and try to deal with the Onabugesha or Onamusha spam that will inevitably come.
Yeah, and I mean, like all fast castle builds, you have to, like, I want to say the first like 3 or 4 minutes after you hit castle, anywhere from maybe anywhere from like 3 to 5 minutes, you really got to do some damage because you spent your entire game getting to castle as quickly as possible. And if you don't take advantage of that, you are going to be behind. Your opponent's going to get to castle age at some point, and they're probably going to have better eco because they took their sweet time getting there, right? So it's such a pivotal moment in any kind of fast castle build, because when we see it with Rus horse archers, like how many villagers horse archers would be able to take down, and it's like, yeah, your opponent got up to castle, but now he's at basically the same amount of villagers as you because of how much damage that you did. So maybe Wham is able to do the same thing with whatever units he chooses to do, if he chooses to go for fast castle, or he could definitely decide to go for a 2 town center and meet French in the boomy boom boom style of boom boom play. We'll see what happens.
We will see what happens as we're into the game number 3 of this series. It is Wham versus SAS, and we are here on Gorge for the final game. See if SAS can bring it home with that best of 3 series. It's a tough position here, but we are on Gorge, and we are just exploring the map, seeing what we can get home for ourselves for dinner. Japanese, a little bit of a weird spot here, has some really strong melee units. However, French with the Arbitria plus 5 melee armor on them could be a potential counter, because we don't see a lot of French recently.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a matchup that hasn't been fully developed or well thought out yet. I think a lot of Japanese players kind of have a small idea of what to do against Jeanne d'Arc, but because of the ability for Jeanne d'Arc to be as hyper aggressive as they are, it still plays a little bit differently from parent French. I like what both of these players are doing in terms of their scouts, because when it comes to Gorge, you could have some of those pocket ecos like really directly in the corner of the map. And you see there are some deer patches, notably one on the northern tip, where if you don't go all the way to the corner, you're not going to find that thing, right? So boar can actually spawn there too. Wham has a relatively favorable deer spawn. I'm not sure how much he'll actually use it, just because of the fact that the Cura storehouse exists if he chooses to go that route. But, for these players, I think the map is going to be really pivotal going forward, because this is a map, even though, it's dry, not necessarily a hybrid or a water map, I really feel like it doesn't play like a lot of other dry maps.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, which is why I just straight up think it was just added as a competitive or just a ladder map as well, right? Because it's so different from Dry Arabia. When you think of it, like if you basically do a mental map of Gorge versus Dry Arabia, it's like, okay, they're pretty similar, right? You have wood, you have gold, it's dry, you have extra resources out on the map. Resource distribution is the same pretty much, with one big stone, one big gold vein. But the addition of these small little walls in the middle, as well as pushing so many of the resources out to the side, it plays so big. It just plays so differently, and I personally love it. I'm here for it. But as per expected, we see the fast knight build. We will probably have a knight out at about 4 minutes here, aging up with 5, which is something I always like to see. It's just I don't know. I usually even age up with 6 because I'm a greedy bastard. So, but yeah, we can see here age up at 340 something. Depends on how clean your macro is. 344 and a knight instantly in queue. Compare that to Wham here, who's doing a slow age up. It's going to be having that Kura storehouse just slowly gathering away. A tower is going to be coming up. So
yeah, what a fantastic build order from SAS. I think if you're going to play the French and you're a newer player, so French is one of those 2 civilizations that always gets recommended to you. I'm not going to mention the other one because I hate playing against it, and you should not play it either. But the French, this is a build order that you should copy. This is a build, if you want to get aggressive, and this is exactly what SAS is doing. He goes up at 343, a knight takes 28 seconds, and then that knight is fully going to get to the other side of the field, probably by about 440-ish, 445 maybe, in terms of time. Wham, on the flip side, has an idea of those times, right? He kind of has an idea that, and he can see the scout pulling, he can see where the knight's going to go, so he puts an outpost over there. If you're playing Japanese against the French or something like Jeanne d'Arc, having something like an outpost is really going to benefit you, especially if you're doing something like trying to get up to castle, or especially if you're doing something like going for a gold heavy unit composition, if you're adding samurais in feudal age, for instance, or getting a lot of the technologies that Japanese has. Remember, they don't just have wheelbarrow, they have wheelbarrow times 3. And it takes a decent amount of gold to do it. Now, first charge coming in for SAS. That's a hearty salute to you, my friend. Good job collecting that gold. You're not going to be doing that anymore. And this is one of the things that I talk about with the French over. And I think I've been talking about this usually around this time of French games, probably for the past 2 years. And it's about getting those couple of worker kills. As you can see, he's doing so well with his micro. He's pulling a little bit of idle time. He did take down one of the villagers, but the French town center, remember, because it's in feudal age, it's getting a villager every 17 seconds instead of 20. So he's getting that little bit of economic up in every 3 seconds. I mean, obviously he'll have, an extra villager per how many villagers that you need to do that. But also he's talking about, or what he's doing is packing the snow and getting rid of, staying aggressive, getting rid of some of Wham villagers so that economic count continues to expound and get bigger and bigger. And the French is such an avalanche civ that when you pack your snow right, you get a big enough snowball, you roll that sumbitch down a hill, and all of a sudden you get an avalanche a little bit later into the game. And I think SAS is doing a really good job at staying aggressive and doing that.
So one thing I also want to point out while we are talking about small details, I mean, okay, snowballing is not a small detail, but that's a very peculiar upgrade, getting range damage. But he doesn't have a single unit. And the reason for this is you got to remember, range damage actually affects outposts as well. So he has just outposted himself up, gets the +1 damage to do extra damage on the knights when they're trying to do run-bys like this. And it's just a small little detail, but those just +1 damage from extra hour really does add up, especially in the knights. So, small little thing could as well be getting textiles. Won't be doing that just yet, and Daimo is not going to be there as well because he's been using a lot of stone on making sure the outposts are upgraded. And well, SAS is kind of just sitting back and trying to think of a solution to the problem right now. There's an upgraded outpost on the gold. There's an upgraded outpost on the deer here. So it's just looking to see if he can spot and find Wham on a little bit of a slacker here.
Yeah, he's doing a good job of minimizing damage. Those outposts are really, really valuable to you. And when you're talking about the Japanese and their build order for going up to Castle Age, he has a little bit more on wood than I usually see. Usually I'll see like 3 or 4 on wood. When I do the build myself, usually I have like 3 or 4 on wood, then 16 on food, and then 8 on gold to try to get you there. But the wood villagers that he had, he needed those extra 1 or 2 villagers because he knew how important outposts were going to be. Did it delay him? Maybe about 15 to 20 seconds? Sure. But you know how many workers that he saved in order to do that? Has 5 on the floating gate now. We're 8 minutes, 15 seconds. So most likely we'll get up probably around the 9-minute time where SAS, he's just playing the French like it's season 0. And he is going 1 TC He's going, he's trying to make a decent amount of units. He's adding some spearmen in as well to try to mitigate damage once Wham does hit Castle Age. He wants to make sure that a lot of his villagers and his military is going to have the ability to deal with a better quality of unit. Because if you take a look at what SAS is doing, you can see his vision over there on the northern side. He's going to those pocket ecos. He's taking Boar. He's taking all of this kind of stuff. He's got to make sure his villagers are protected.
Yeah, we just see now SAS has spotted the floating gate going up. Not too much he can do about it, however. All he can sit back is just make units. Now, there's a couple of options here for SAS. He's either going to be going full into feudal and just stay in feudal, make those spears, make those knights, or he can try to go up himself, which does not seem to be the thing he's doing, considering he's making those knights. To be going a little bit aggressive here as well. +1 range damage or armor is going to be coming in, which does mean that he is diving time. Going to be targeting down the floating gate, making sure that this does not go up, because the longer he stays on this, the longer it means that he is able to build an advantage that we talked about earlier. Villagers as well, one charge going to be going through. Does lose a lot of knights for this though, so it's a costly why is that? You're dead. You're not supposed to be floating. Floating gate, sorry, right, my bad.
Yeah, he was confused. It's the gate that floats. But the the amount of spearmen and knights that SAS has might be able to kind of stop this from happening. But I think, to be honest, I think Wham is going for the very correct unit, and I think Onimusha would be the play in this situation, because SAS is making spearmen, right, which are a slower unit, and he's making knights, which Onimusha, they do the extra damage to the knights, and they're able to kite the spearmen. The one really important technology, if you hover over to the X technology, something that you really should be getting, the Kabayura Ya Whistling Arrow. It makes Onimusha fire. Once they see an enemy, they increase move speed for about 10 seconds. It makes kiting a dream with these things. So getting that technology is really, really important, and hopefully Wham is able to research it very quickly. But you can see how the Onimusha do in terms of kiting. Now they're just going to back up. Going to keep taking hits. That Royal Knight down to about 60% health, and he's going to continue to be able to kite them. The Spearmen have to back up because they're not going to be able to get there. No bonus damage against the Spearmen, but they do get all of that damage hitting towards them, and they have a decent amount of base damage the way it is. So really good unit, and just having about 4 or 5 of them with a scout made SAS back up with his tail between his legs. It's insane.
Yeah, he needs to run. At least he's able to pick up these pocket ecos, so that's the main thing with these Onimusha, right? They're kind of just stuck as a fighting. They can raid, but you don't really want to go raid with them. At least not right now. He's still making some. Should see some of them try to sneak out elsewhere on the map. I mean, Wham has knowledge that there is... Oh no. He does not know where anything is. Now he's actually moving out as well. He's going to see if he can find some of these pocket ecos. And SAS is aware of this. He has put up 2 towers here. He's going to be preemptively jumping into those as well, making sure that he cannot be harassed here. Again, right, there's really strong units. But they're still ranged units, so towers is not a good friend of them, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in those old Rus Horse Archer builds how much towers actually cause them to put a dent in their plan. I mean, just as long as those villagers have a safe place to be, they're not going to be taken down. Boar was probably the only real raidable area, along with that deer pack over there on the eastern side for the French. But the Onimusha, just because of the fact that those towers exist, make it so it's a little bit more difficult. And SAS obviously has the micro to make sure that he's not going to be able to do too much damage, I should say. But the fact that he got those Onimusha, right, really means that SAS was not able to put on the feudal pressure that he wanted. And SAS is still on 1 town center. He did not go for a second one. So that economic advantage for the French isn't compounded like it usually is when somebody tries to go 2 town centers. And it looks like he's trying to get some raids going. On the other side, not really going to happen. Wham on the other side, trying to get some raids going. Not really going to happen, because SAS actually does make the correct choice and goes into Horseman instead. Look at that Whistling Arrow. Gives them that little bit of time. You can kite around. You can even kite around something like Horseman. It looks like no Onimusha are getting harmed in the making of this. And he's kiting around.
Can he get
it's counter.
Oh my gosh. Can't even get one. Now
What an
Knights.
unbelievable display of micro. Those Knights are going to be able to come down, and they are slim pickings, let me tell you. Those Knights, they're going to try to get a charge like that. They're going to make some dead Knights.
Yeah, and they're just going to be able to catch up as well, which is the main problem here. Has the extra movements, or sorry, they don't have the extra movement speed, but they have a higher movement speed than those Knights as well. I think. No, I have 1.62. Never mind. So, in a little bit of a tough position here. Micro is pretty heavy from Wham here, though. It has to be on point. One little misstep, and those spears getting on top of them could be the end of them pretty damn quickly. But for the time being, it's just running. SAS going up with the Guild Hall as well.
Actually, you're exactly right about the kiting ability. This is definitely for Wham, and we're seeing how well this is being played for him. This is a high skill ceiling build. You know, if you're able to do the kiting, if you have the presence of mind and the micro to do it, it's so much fun to pull off. You know, and I think Wham did a good job of doing that. Now that SAS is Castle Age, he has new multitude of units available to him. You know, he can add things like Arbaletrier. He can add things like continue to get his horseman upgrades that'll be beneficial to him if he chooses to do that. I don't think Knights necessarily might be the play, but Wham has got to be thinking about, and he is thinking about correctly, what is the opponent going to make to try to stop my Onimusha? He's making things like horsemen. So now you have things like infantry that are available to you to kind of protect the Onimusha, because the horsemen, yeah, they'll do well against those, but there's not a lot of units out of the barracks that horsemen will be good against. And Wham is going to be using Onabugisha to make that little bit of a front line. And you got to remember about those horsemen, they don't have, or samurai, I should say, excuse me. The horsemen don't have the things like melee armor. So having a unit like this will make quick work of the horsemen. So Wham doing a fantastic job evolving his army composition into what it's got to be.
Yeah, and we're starting to get to the bread and butter of the Japanese at this point in the game, right? We're kind of just like, I mean, it's only 3 barracks, right? It's only 3 barracks that's pumping samurai. Going to be expecting more, to be fair, in the near future, because yeah, I don't know. Just in general, we can see this, like, he's just going to be spamming samurai. And SAS has been baited into this. SAS has been perfectly predicted and baited into this. He's going up with horsemen, which, again, will be a decent meat shield for the samurai and against the Onimusha. But he needs a backline to be able to deal with this, and he's just now adding his first archery range.
Yeah, I mean, I could see SAS also getting the Royal Knight upgrade. Maybe it's because he has Royal Knights, or maybe he wants to do Horsemen and Knights. Looks like Knights trying to get him in a little bit of a raid. That Shinto priest, I don't care what religion you're following, you're dead. And that 4th relic will remain sitting there as a delectable religious artifact, not gathering gold per minute. But essentially, just because of the field position that Wham had, getting that Shinto priest, we can assume that he's got about 4 relics. And then SAS is going to pick up the 5th, which is more on his side. But this is one of the things now that I really like this build for, and something that Wham, I feel like, had the potential and had the opportunity to do. And he added a 2nd town center over there on the south side. So now he's kind of negating all of the things that the French have as an advantage over the Japanese. The Onimusha did a good job of that by curbing down things like Knights. The field, or the map control that Wham was able to get with those Onimusha did things like making sure Wham could get pocket ecos, number 1. Number 2, able to get a 2nd town center on another site. So I feel like for SAS, to be honest, I feel like SAS is a mile behind. I don't see any kind of economic upgrade over Wham. I don't see any militaristic upgrade over Wham. So he's got to do something here, or he's going to be slaughtered by all of these Onimusha.
And you can see here, when the spears get onto the Onimusha, they die. The issue is getting onto them, right? And we also saw in that chase how long the horsemen actually stayed alive compared to the knights, right? The knights kind of just got melted while the horseman was like, yeah, I take some damage, but I can maybe make it out alive. And now we're just slowly building, right? Arbitria slowly but surely building up a little bit of a mass behind this. Will it be enough to deal with the Onimusha is the question, though. Big question.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like, honestly, it's like magical to watch. I mean, Wham can kite all of these. The Horsemen, Knights, he doesn't give a damn what units SAS makes. But I think SAS is doing the right thing by adding a ranged composition to it. You know, I mean, one of the ways to actually take down Onimusha, just like the ways to take down Horse Archers, just like the ways to take down Mangudai, is make them sit there and be in a fight. And I think with the ranged mass, if they're going to be able to get close to the Spearmen or get close to the Horsemen, they're going to be taking a ranged mass. They're going to be taking ranged arrows. And if the Onimusha have the disadvantage of sitting in a fight and not using their mobility, that's where you really got to kill them. It's just in terms of how SAS is going to be able to do that is not something that I have a solution for at this time.
Yeah, and we can. This is really funny. It's like, okay, step number 1, build Onimusha. Step number, Onimusha. Step number 2, build Samurai. Step number 3, build Onabugeisha. Step number 4, take a fight and win.
And honestly, I think I think this is one unit that a lot of people really, really love as the Japanese, and I do too. It's a lot of fun using them. You're watching them slice and dice every which way amongst a lot of units. Now, if SAS goes Arbalete and does get the Gambeson's technology, which increases your melee armor by 5, Onabugeisha actually don't really do too much. So it's difficult for Wham. He might need to go into something like Siege, which he does with the Mangonel. Might go into something like Cavalry to try to take down Arbalete. They're kind of a fickle unit, to be honest with you. But now Wham realizes, I think he does realize his position. And he's going to be trying to make a ram. Does have the Mangonel for a little bit of siege superiority as well. And he's really trying to take to the French. I think he might be trying to end this game now.
He just might be, but I feel like the upcoming fight here could be really, really scary very quickly for both players. All he needs is one Mangonel shot on the backline of the Arbalete, and that's going to be it. That's going to be the fight right there and there. But if that Mangonel is left unprotected for just a little bit and long enough for the Horsemen or the Knights to be able to get on the backline, I'm not sure if that is going to win Wham any fights anytime soon. Melee armor is going to be coming through as well now. That does mean, again, that an upcoming fight could be huge here. Siege Workshop under a little bit of pressure here now. It's going to be camping that one, but it's not going to be popping out as a Springle just yet. So they did get pop blocked for a second there. Springle is out now though. Oh, Mangonel shot. Started getting a little bit of a feeler as to what we're coming up right now though. The Mangonel shots here needs to be dodged away. Is going to be done so as well. Springle is on the Mangonel shot, which will be taking it out on the fight here. Front line is going to be disappearing slowly but surely for both players now. The Arbalete are doing damage. The Onabugeisha as well, not in the fight anymore. And this fight is looking like it might be turning into SAS's favor slowly but surely, as the Arbalete is not contested on the backside.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that play-by-play. The Arbalete didn't really have anything that was countering them. You can see what the Onabugeisha are trying to do against the Arbalete with the Gambeson's technology. You got 4 or 5 of them trying to hack away at one Arbalete, and it's not really happening too well for him. Right. I mean, he made a decent amount of Samurai, but the Samurai just end up getting eaten alive by the Arbalete. Now SAS tried to add some siege of his own, has a couple Springolds, has a Mangonel, might be able to do something good against those Onimusha, but now Wham's starting to think about going back to the drawing board. He's like, okay, what units am I going to make against these things? I mean, he's got a decent amount of Onabugeisha in the queue, and it looks like that's what he's going to be attempting to do. They will be able to get to the Arbalete. You know, I mean, in terms of mobility, the Onabugeisha are going to have it. But on the flip side, not necessarily just taking a battle one-on with that 2 heads butting in the middle of the gorge, or the crevasse, I guess, of the gorge. More so about raiding. You got to be thinking about that too, because if SAS doesn't have the ability to produce the units that he can, that might prove to be his downfall. You see a raiding mass over there on the eastern side. There's a blue blob kind of working its way over where that eastern side gold mine is. There's a lot of Onimusha here. There's a lot of Onabugeisha. There's a decent amount of outposts, but Onabugeisha do have torches, so they will be able to try to take down a lot of these units. French villagers starting to run for their lives at a time where just because SAS has one town center might not necessarily have the ability to reproduce all of them. The Arbalete trying to run their way over on the eastern side, but again, those Onimusha have the mobility They can continue to raid and try to back up from this fight if they do so choose, and that's exactly what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to kite those horsemen all the way around. The Onabugisha are going to try to find more villagers to make quick work of, and I think for Wham, this could be a key to a victory for him. He tried to take that battle one-on-one, and SAS ended up proving actually a little bit of an upper hand, but Wham now has his post-game economy with about 100 villagers, and you can see how much Onabugisha he was able to spam out of all the barracks as cow. He's got about 51 right now.
Yeah, we're currently sitting at 12 barracks.
But I mean, take a look at like all of these. You're hearing all of these going on. There's another raid going on in the woodline because the Onabugisha being as quickly. There's another Onabugisha mass coming up north. Wham is doing the exact perfect thing to try to take and win this game. I mean, he's not taking that battle head on. He doesn't have to. He could just go ahead and raid all over the place. He's doing exactly that, taking down outposts, villagers, farms, mills. Who cares what it is? They're going to get hacked into absolute bits.
It is just everywhere. And remember, the Onabugisha, they're so goddamn quick as well. Almost as fast as the horsemen. So the only thing that can really catch up to them is the horsemen. And they don't do too well against them, especially when the siege is standing still. Needs to be able to protect this, as this is an expensive investment that is going straight down the drain. But an expensive investment that does not go straight down is the gunsmith. It's coming up right now. It's going up to the Imperial. He's going to be getting some of those Uzutsu. Could be potential screaming in our ears too soon, or some nest of bees. There's a couple, or did I get nest of bees? I don't really remember at this point. But there could be a lot of trouble coming in shortly, and SAS is getting punished straight up for his lack of walls. And look at this as well. Wham is being relentless, just adding proxy base here, as if 13 barracks was not enough. It's just gonna add even more, and there Imperial goes up, and that is going to be the it for SAS. He taps out.
Yeah, what an unbelievable game. I mean, you kind of thought that first initial one, you were like, hey, that first initial engagement, you're like, hey, SAS did a pretty good job. He stayed true to his military. If you go to the military count of it here, that first initial engagement wasn't that bad for either side. You know, SAS was able to hold his own. You think you might be able to try to get some more units at that point to continue to go, but Wham was like, hey, you know, I didn't win that. Well, I didn't necessarily come out the overwhelming victor of that head-to-head battle. So I'm not going to take a head-to-head battle anymore. And I'm just going to go around and kill all of your villagers. And, you know, the lack of walls made SAS's economic count probably go down to about 50 by the end of it. And Wham had his farm eco just because of the Cura storehouse. He had all of his barracks churning out everything that he possibly needed. Pretty much he only needed food and gold at that point, because Onabugisha at 60 food and 20 gold, if you have your farm economy with your Shogunate Palace around it, you can spam Onabugisha, man, into next game.